Group, and then we will introduce our own practices, and later group, and then we will introduce our own practices, and later move on to another rewriting exercise. That will be shared on screen. So in the time that we have across writing across drawing, writing, and thinking. And it's also available online. So just that you get an idea how it looked. And it's also available online. So just that you get an idea how it looked. Everyone was writing in a Google Doc, and then the other members eventually started to comment on each other. And then also it was much more than a text. It was basically a conversation on page, and that gave us then the idea space from there.
No, I would love to. All right. My name is Londiwe Mtshali, and I am a multidisciplinary artist. And at this current moment, I work the mediums of installation, experimental photography, printmaking, and video, and a bit of photography, printmaking, and video, and a bit of animation from time, most notably. So the way that we use their own separate meanings and how we in fact imbue meaning into certain words, especially moving from languages to languages, especially as people who speak multiple languages, who are multilingual or who are bilingual, like myself. So I really was intrigued by this, and I really wanted to kind of drill down into breaking down words and the meanings that we give them. Lots of words for me personally, as I was home in my master's writing, and also in a few kind of writing pieces that I've done outside of, being a university student, have really kind of our history with place, especially as Black people. So I started to really think about the word home and the kinds of ways that we've attached spaces, feelings, and emotions to words. So I started to look at Jacques Derrida and his theory of deconstruction, which is a philosophical approach which seeks to critique concepts, words, and systems of thoughts. And in particular, I wanted to look at language, and I continue to look at language in my work, which is often dependent on context and under lectures and between people. So I started to really look, and an image that has been really interesting for me is trying to think of a word in itself and having it physically being broken down. So taking as legit. So in this work, so this is a work that was made as part of my master's, as part of the practical part of my practical component of my master's.
Sorry, Londi.
Yes.
Jody, can you please mute? Okay. Okay, you can.
Sorry. Okay, so this is a work that was made as part of the practical components, part of my solo exhibition. So basically in this work, aside from the fact that it cost from a physical size of home, and the processes that so I started to really think about the word in itself. And in this instance, the word could be any word. It could be the color pink. And I started to really think about practices of homing and how practices of homing and practices of breaking words can be linked together. And I came up on my own, with the method of breaking down words and breaking down associations that we've imbued with words and other experiences, both in writing, both in art and in other human experiences. So this method came about when I was teaching English to Taiwanese students. And it really has to do with really thinking about words and thinking about concepts with very little visual cue. So what would happen ideally in this performance or in this provocation would be we would close our eyes. If you would like to, in the background, close your eyes and I'll do the cue with you. You can just shout the words out or write them down. And so we close our eyes and I would first ask you, what is your favorite color? What does it taste like? What does it sound like? What is home? What color is home? And what does it taste like? So in these cues, take time to answer as best you can if you want to. And in these cues, I was really trying to strip people of any kind of visual cue in order for them to really hone down into really thinking about what they really thought of that particular thing or what they really kind of associate with that thing, things that we have learned, things that we have gathered as we grow. And sometimes it's very interesting to also do the cues with children and really kind of getting into the mind and the curiosity and the imagination of children as well. So what I have really kind of taken in and what I really want to move forward into my practice, and currently I'm doing it, is further thinking about what happens when that stone is broken or that rock is broken, and what happens when the favorite color is blueberry and it really tastes like grass. Let me move to my following slide. So let's move to my major curiosity of what happens when the hammer breaks the rock, or even what happens when the rock is when the word is broken by the hammer. So in this work that you see on the screen, which is a shot from the installation of a shot from one of the many installations of my master's show, Homescape Spaces Between Ikaya, Home and Ikaya. is one of the most interesting, is the more interesting kind of conclusions, or one of the most interesting departures when thinking about deconstructing words and reconstructing them. So we have the image of the hammer in the background, which is the literal deconstruction of a word or deconstruction of a concept, and the reconstruction of it being in the kind of intangibilities that are intangible, that are tangible in the way that we interpret things. So if you look at about things, and that kind of reconstruction is where our imagination and our curiosities kind of move in between spaces of knowing and spaces of play and spaces of looking, but not necessarily having kind of fixed things to think about. So moving back into that kind of idea of reconstruction, I started to look at a lot of the results. To my next slide. Attempts are very kind of, intangible. Like, what should really purple taste like? What does blue taste like? Some people said it tastes like grass, which is very interesting. But I think in my practice, mostly looking at things that really shouldn't, have a certain feeling towards them, or that we have carried, or there are a lot of things, people have imbued and have felt, and that are stuck in memory, stuck in feeling, stuck in emotion, that speak very specifically to home. But there are a lot of things that are felt and are very much so anchors of the human experience that are never really experimented with or talked about until. Thank you.
Thank you, Londi. Let's move on to Pebo,
who has joined. Pebofatso Mokoena. I am a visual artist from Joburg, from the south of actually, in a place because to me the connection between writing and more entangled literary framework, and again, like in these kind of for me the real kind of drawing and writing, in a sense, is really connected in relation to connected and line, right? The drawn line or the written line, or like when like a simple line is with ways of pronunciation and ways of pronunciation, and those kind of relationships for me are kind of made, I think of them as a kind of hyperlink, and kind of this movement between image, text, the literary back to the image, which folds back into the kind of visual again, to me is a very kind of important way to think through like the way that we function in the kind of like as written in the kind of ideological, philosophical, conceptual. It can be social, it can be political, it can be even economic, and so kind of these really tight connections that we'd like to think of as separate. I think of them as really kind of almost family members. If we can move on to the next slide, then show you some images. And so, like I said before, when I began introducing myself, mentioning the fact that I spent kind of like the first 5 years of my life in Thokoza, which is a township in the East Rand of the waterfront. And for me, having been born in 1993, it's a very, very kind of important time in that place, because it was the site of like very kind of a very, very violent and traumatic time for a lot of people, because they were kind of like because they were factional and fictional, geo-transportational, political and social kind of unrest in Thokoza. And so having kind of been born into that place, and not necessarily like knowing what really happened, and like it's really kind of difficult for people to talk about these issues, as people as Londiwe was trying to say, like for me, like drawing then kind of became a way for me to engage with these human experiences, right? And then like when I began to draw, and when I began to think about these drawings, it then became easier to think about writing about what really happened. And so so these kind of documents are then kind of interjected, they kind of flow between writing, text and image, and the literary, to think about, as Londi said, these anchors of human experience. Can we move on to then kind of visualize them in painting, but also to speak the language of drawing in the way that I think that I articulate the world in relation to the visual, but also thinking of the image as text, thinking of the image as a place where we can begin to read stories as opposed to only.
Hi everyone, my name is Philiswa Lila. I am a multidisciplinary artist. I'm based in Pretoria. So in my practice, the theme of memory is very dominant, and it's an ongoing act of remembering, like to think about things from past experiences, but also remembering them in terms of dismantling some of the memories and taking them as they come, reflecting and storytelling. So my work begins with painting, hence I'm showing this image here on the right, which is from my solo exhibition, No Golide, Have I Taken This Name for Myself? So in this exhibition, the writing was the main medium. And how did I move from writing to painting? I was actually painting by writing by painting, because I was so familiar with the painting medium. I wanted to write a letter to No Golide, but I couldn't get to the text. And so it started off with, I think also I was scared at the same time to write the letter, because letters are personal, and, especially in written form, because the letter I sent to her was handwritten, and they're archival as well. So it's something that you also keep as part of a memorabilia or something that is sentimental. So I didn't also know how she would respond to the letter. So I had a lot of thinking to do, and a lot in my mind, because Unokolide was somebody I grew up with. So I was kind of telling stories of what I knew about her or thought about her and watching her from a distance, but not really having a relationship with her, even though she was my neighbor. She was older than me. So as I was making these paintings, this one is titled Bone Black. It was at the time I was also reading Bell Hooks' memoir, Bone Black. And I was reflecting on girlhood, on self-esteem, on love, and care. And some of the objects I usually have in my studio, like I say, it's photographs and my photo album, and objects that I use as part of my artworks that I find at home, to reflect on those memories and past experiences. Okay, next slide. Thank you, Fouad. Okay, then at some point when I was sort of finished with the paintings, as much as I thought I was writing by painting, I saw that I was actually, there was more inside of the painting on the other side, instead of me writing and expressing myself to Unokolide. And that's when I did a collaborative project with Utabo. And we started just free writing, with not much really to say, but just reflecting on our different spaces that we're in. He was in the Eastern Cape, I was here in Pretoria. And we started writing, and he picked up that I was actually writing to Nogolide, and he encouraged me to actually continue writing to her instead of trying to bring in other texts to hide what I wanted to say with her, or still being afraid to actually express myself, even though I was not writing to her at that point. I was with Utabo. So the writing itself, as you can see on the left, it started with different like diary entries, and also going through old envelopes at home and using those as part of the collaging process of the work. So on this artwork on the left, the pen and the paper actually became the mediums where I expressed the writing. And then on the right, I used the needle, and the needle as a writing tool for me is something that is very dominant in my practice as well, because I use the needle for my beadwork as well. So here it was at a point where the writing on paper itself with the pen was not coming across in the way that I wanted to. It felt limiting in a way. And it felt limiting in the sense that, you know, as you write, you get tired as well. As you put words on paper, you also, I don't know, you also exhaust yourself in what you're thinking in what you're thinking and you want to say, and putting it on paper at the same time, all of those thoughts happening, but you are in the process of writing. And so, and it became poetic. You know how you make sense of things. This threading and needlework actually, because it's slow, it makes you listen more to how you read and write. You kind of perform that act yourself, and sometimes it distances yourself from concepts or ideas. Validate those as part of coming up of that, because my mom couldn't to one another, but it's also now becoming an image of my daughter, who also looks like